We're going to talk to Edwina Currie. Peter Cardwell's still here, Benedict Spence as well. We're going to find out what the process is to get a new leader for the Tory party. But the big story really is the surprise, not the surprise to many of us, of course. Here at Talk, we've been predicting it for a while. The surprise gains made by Reform, who have currently got 4 MPs going into Parliament. But they've got such a big share of the vote. People are starting to ask questions about how fair the system is. Also, the Lib Dems, who've done very, very well indeed. The SNP, absolutely hopeless. They've been reduced to, so far, 9 MPs. They've lost big time up in Scotland. And we're going to be hearing from all of the leaders, of course, over time as we go. But let's talk to Edwina Currie, former Conservative Minister. Edwina, very good morning to you.
Well, it's not that very good morning, but, yeah,
no.
Hi.
Well, I mean, you can harken back to a happier time when the Tory party seemed to know what it was doing. I mean, you know, John Major used to get the blame for a lot of things, but, you know, he looks like a great statesman under the current rules, doesn't he?
Well, in fact, the moment the SNP started to collapse in Scotland, which is now a couple of years ago, I thought to myself, oh dear, that means Labour's going to win those seats up there. They can't form a government without winning seats in Scotland, and it looks like they're going to do that. So we are going to be facing a really big challenge. What Starmer has been able to do, and I think we should all pay him some compliments for this, is he's managed to detoxify the Labour Party from where it was when Corbyn was leading it last time. He's managed to win back much of the Jewish vote, the support of people who felt very alienated before. And part of the outcome of that has been they're getting the support, the donors, the organisation. I think they've done very, very well. They haven't done as well as they might have hoped. The turnout is well down. They're only about 10-11% ahead of the Tories, which is not where we started the campaign. There was a 20% gap or more. And, of course, they have actually lost some seats and they're facing their own challenge from people who are pro-Palestine or independents or have been expelled from the Labour Party like Jeremy Corbyn. So, and those people are going to be in Parliament causing them a great deal of problems, just as Reform's going to be poking away at us.
Well, indeed. But also, Benedict Spence this morning was saying to us here that Reform are also going to be poking at Labour because they're second in an awful lot of seats, not far behind Labour, particularly in some of those northern and northeastern constituencies particularly. So, I mean, they're posing quite a big threat because their share of the vote is massive. I mean, I know they've only got 4 seats, but, you know, nearly 15% of the vote.
Well, that's absolutely right. And, of course, the issue that has taken them to that level is immigration. So in some ways, that's easier for Labour to deal with because Labour will simply say, well, they're pro-immigration and they're not worried and we need the numbers. And now they've won the election, immigration doesn't have to be an issue that Labour has to be in any way...
Well, except they were quite strong on immigration, weren't they, during the sort of hustings and during the debates? I mean, Keir Starmer was threatening to send people back to the countries they came from. He was threatening to stop and smash the gangs who were trafficking people here. He was threatening to set up all sorts of processing centres in France. You know, surely you can't just ignore all that, can he?
Well, he's going to find it an awful lot harder to achieve than he thinks. I mean, does he really think that the existing government hasn't been trying to smash the gangs?
Well, of course. I mean, that's the problem.
Cooperating with other countries. And we've done it. We've actually succeeded. I mean, one of the reasons people come across in the boats is because they no longer can come across on the lorries. We've managed to do that. But making long-term progress is a grinding activity. It's a practical activity. It's not a political activity. And I suspect that Starmer is going to get pretty short shrift from the new people leading the polls in France. France itself has changed a lot. Anyway, my point is that Reform can jump up and down about that all they like, but Starmer doesn't have to take any notice of them at all. And they're not going to be poking around at Conservatives because they think they've destroyed us. They're going to find that's not the case. Do
you fear for the future of the Conservative Party? And if you do, who's going to lead them next, do you think?
Well, those two things are bound up together, aren't they? It's very like what happened after 1997. In fact, in many ways, the results is rather similar to 1997, when we were down to a rump in Parliament. I'd lost my seat, and Tony Blair. Actually, I think it ended up with one more seat than Starmer.
Slightly more, yes, exactly right.
So it is very similar in some ways. And William Hague, who we chose as our leader at that point, has said most recently, don't be in a rush. You know, don't choose somebody in a rush, and don't assume that you're just going to get back into power very quickly. It can take a long time for these lessons to sink home. And the lessons have to be sensible ones about managing the economy, about not making promises unless you can actually achieve them. Margaret Thatcher never made a promise. She used to just do it and then claim the credit. That's a much more successful way of going about that. Being smart about how you campaign, perhaps being a little more understated, a little less noisy, but nonetheless actually managing to achieve what you're setting out to do.
And that is the problem, of course. Edwina, thank you very much indeed. Edwina Currie, the former Conservative Minister, as I say, harking back to a time when it seemed like the Tories actually knew what they were doing.